The Great Pyramid of Giza faces true north with an error smaller than 1/15th of a degree. This was not an accident, but the result of sophisticated astronomy that modern science has yet to fully explain. By the end of this journey, you will understand the forgotten methods that allowed ancient builders to achieve near-perfect celestial alignment. How did they translate the positions of stars into stone with such incredible accuracy? And what simple tools made this precision possible? What does it suggest about our own relationship with the past when structures built millennia ago still hold secrets we are uncovering? That alignment with true north required a perfect starting point, a foundational line drawn across the desert. To find it, the pyramid builders turned their eyes upward to the circumpolar stars that never set. These eternal sentinels of the night sky, revolving around the celestial pole, offered the constant, unchanging reference they needed. The key was not a single star, but a pair. Think of the night sky as a vast, slow-moving clock. The ancient astronomers identified two specific stars, Kochab in the bowl of the Little Dipper and Mizar in the middle of the Big Dipper's handle. At a precise moment in the night, these two stars would align vertically, one directly above the other, like two jewels on an invisible string. This vertical alignment pointed directly to the celestial North Pole. All an observer had to do was mark the point on the horizon directly beneath this perfect vertical line. It was a simple yet brilliant method of celestial surveying. They would drive a stake into the ground, sight the stars, and have a colleague place a second stake far in the distance, perfectly in line with the sighting rod and the stars above. By repeating this process over many nights, they could trace a long, incredibly straight baseline running perfectly north-south. This was the master line from which the entire pyramid complex would grow. This was not wild speculation. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt centuries later, recorded that the builders first carefully leveled the site and then, quote, proceeded to lay the corners in accordance with the celestial signs. He was likely describing the remnants of this very technique, a forgotten practice that used the clockwork of the heavens to draw the first sacred line on the earth. But marking a line in the sand is one thing. How did they ensure that the massive stone foundation, weighing millions of tons, would sit perfectly level upon the earth, a necessity for the precise angles to come? That master line on the desert floor was only the beginning. The true challenge was translating that single line into a perfectly square foundation, a task requiring tools of both elegant simplicity and profound insight. One such device was the Merkhet. Picture a forked stick held steady by an astronomer, a simple plumb line dangling from its center. This was no ordinary stick, but a precision instrument. The horizontal bar featured a narrow vertical slit, a window to the heavens, while the weighted string defined a perfect vertical against the night sky. On a clear, dark evening, an Egyptian astronomer would set up his Merkhet, aligning the slit with a specific circumpolar star, like Dub in the Big Dipper. His role was to wait patiently as the star made its eternal journey around the North Pole. He would mark the precise moments it crossed an imaginary north-south line in the sky, the meridian. Another colleague, stationed a great distance away, would perform the same ritual. By coordinating their sightings over several nights, they created a series of reference points. They were not relying on a single observation, which could be skewed by a flickering star or a shaky hand. Instead, they were building a dataset, averaging multiple measurements to cancel out tiny errors. This systematic approach reveals a sophisticated understanding of statistics, a concept we often associate with much later periods. The result was a grid of true north-south lines, a celestial blueprint laid upon the Earth with an error margin modern surveyors find astounding. How could such a basic tool achieve such phenomenal results? The secret lies not in the complexity of the device, but in the relentless patience and repeatable process of its users. They turn the predictable motion of the stars into a terrestrial reality, proving that the most advanced technology is sometimes a simple idea, perfectly executed. With their foundation square and true, the builders faced their next monumental task, one that required them to defy gravity itself, to make a mountain of stone sit perfectly flat upon the Earth. But that celestial grid, etched into the desert by starlight, was only half the story. To build a foundation that would endure for millennia, the pyramid masters needed a second, independent method of verification, one that used the sun itself. Their tool for this task was the gnomon, a simple vertical rod that transformed into a precision instrument under the bright Egyptian sky. Think of it as the world's most patient sundial. The rod was placed at the center of a perfectly leveled, circular stone platform, its surface marked with concentric rings. As the sun journeyed from east to west, the rod's shadow swept across this platform like the hand of a clock. The key moment came at solar noon when the sun reached its highest point in the sky. At that exact instant, the shadow was at its absolute shortest, pointing directly toward true north. An observer would quickly mark the shadow's tip. This was not a one-day affair. They repeated this ritual day after day, week after week, tracing the path of the shadow tips and finding their midpoint. This process averaged out the tiny daily variations, revealing a line of astonishing straightness. The true brilliance of this method lay in its seasonal adjustment. The ancient astronomers understood that the sun's path across the sky changes with the seasons. They knew they had to account for this solar declination, making careful corrections to their measurements at different times of the year. This was not guesswork. Archaeologists have found evidence of these very platforms at Giza, with their precisely carved markings still visible. Modern surveys have confirmed the result, an alignment to true north within a mere 0.05 of a single degree. This solar technique provided a powerful, independent check on the alignments they derived from the stars. It was a system of celestial cross-referencing, proving their mastery over both the day and night skies. They were not relying on a single point of failure. Instead, they built a web of evidence where the sun confirmed what the stars had already proclaimed. This relentless pursuit of verification, using the simplest of tools, is what separates a rough construction from an eternal monument. With their foundation laid square, level, and perfectly oriented, the builders could finally turn to the most visually defining aspect of their creation, the breathtaking ascent of the pyramid's faces. Yet even the sun and stars could not solve every problem of alignment. The pyramid's foundation was not a single plane, but a sprawling platform covering 13 acres, and it had to be perfectly level. A tiny slope at the base would magnify into a catastrophic tilt at the summit. Their solution was as ingenious as it was simple, harnessing the most fundamental law of nature. They cut long, narrow trenches around the construction site and filled them with water. On a still night, the surface of this water became a flawless mirror, reflecting the constellations above with perfect clarity. This was more than just a reflection, it was a tool. An astronomer could look down into the trench and see a star shining up from the dark water. By lining up the real star in the sky with its twin in the water, he could establish a sightline of absolute precision. The water's surface, by its very nature, always seeks to be perfectly horizontal. This created a stable reference plane that could be extended for hundreds of feet across the site. Workers used this to set stone blocks to the exact same height, checking their progress against the unwavering plane of the water. The true brilliance of this method revealed itself as the pyramid grew. Small errors invisible at the base would have become glaring mistakes by the 500th course of stone. To prevent this, the builders likely maintained these water channels at different levels of the rising structure. Recent archaeological work around the Giza Plateau has uncovered the remnants of precisely cut, narrow channels that match this description, channels that could not have been for irrigation or drainage. They were surveying tools. This hydraulic technique transformed a simple natural principle into a masterwork of engineering. It meant the builders were not just aligning the pyramid to the heavens, but ensuring that every single layer of its immense body was locked into that celestial alignment from the desert floor to the soaring apex. With the foundation perfectly level and oriented, the focus could shift from the horizontal to the vertical, to the breathtaking geometry that would define the skyline for millennia. The stars gave them direction and the sun confirmed their path, but the pyramid's ultimate precision was born from a mastery of time itself. Their entire construction schedule was governed by a celestial calendar, an intricate dance between the earth and the heavens. The most critical event in their year was the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, the moment it first becomes visible just before dawn after a period of absence. This event, which they called the going up of the Sothis, heralded the imminent flooding of the Nile. For the Egyptians, this was not just a seasonal marker, it was the new year, a time of rebirth and the perfect moment to begin a project of eternal significance. Temple records show that priests, who were also master astronomers, would declare the most auspicious dates for laying a pyramid's foundation stones. They waited for periods when the planets were in favorable configurations and the key circumpolar stars were at their most prominent in the night sky. This careful timing was a strategic masterstroke. By scheduling the initial critical alignment work for these specific windows, they ensured the skies were at their clearest and their celestial reference points were unmistakably bright. It was about creating the best possible observational conditions for that first perfect line in the sand. Their civil calendar of 365 days was ingeniously integrated with observations of the moon, creating a robust system that could guide a project spanning decades. This long-term vision was essential. A pyramid was not built in a single season, but over the reigns of multiple pharaohs. The calendrical system acted as a master clock, ensuring that every generation of builders who came to the site, even years later, was working from the same celestial blueprint. The precision of the pyramids, therefore, was not just a product of brilliant tools but of brilliant timing. They understood that to build for eternity, you must first align your efforts with the timeless cycles of the cosmos. This deep integration of astronomy into their very schedule reveals a culture that saw no separation between the sacred rhythms of the sky and the practical work of shaping the earth. Deep within the pyramid's immense stone heart, hidden from the desert sun, lies one of its most enduring puzzles. Two narrow shafts, barely wide enough for a human hand, climb upward from the king's chamber, piercing through the massive core masonry to open to the sky. For centuries, these channels were dismissed as simple ventilation ducts, but the stars tell a different story. The southern shaft did not point to just any patch of sky. It was aimed with surgical precision at Al-Nitak, the central star in Orion's belt, around the year 2600 BCE. The northern shaft targeted Thuban, which was the pole star of that ancient epoch. This was not a coincidence. Imagine the pyramid not as a silent tomb, but as a frozen observatory. Its builders designed these shafts as permanent telescopes, locking specific celestial bodies into the very fabric of the building. The star Thuban, circling the North Pole, would have been visible through its shaft every night, a constant cyclical companion. The alignment with Orion's belt, a constellation deeply woven into Egyptian mythology as the god Osiris, suggests a profound connection between the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife and the eternal cycles of the cosmos. This transforms the pyramid from a mere monument into a machine for the soul, engineered to guide the king by the unchanging stars. The practical challenge of building these shafts is almost beyond comprehension. How do you accurately aim a narrow tunnel through hundreds of feet of solid stone with an error margin of less than a single degree to hit a moving target in the night sky? The conventional theory of simple ventilation collapses under the weight of this astronomical precision. A more compelling idea is that the builders used preliminary observation shafts during the pyramid's construction. They would have built low, temporary structures to house these sighting tubes, using them to maintain their celestial bearings as each new layer of stone was added. Once the pyramid reached its full height, these temporary structures were dismantled, and the precise alignments were permanently sealed inside the masonry, becoming the hidden channels we discover today. This method turns the entire construction process into a continuous act of astronomical verification. The shafts are not an afterthought, they are the proof of a process, the preserved blueprint of a celestial vision. They stand as perhaps the most elegant evidence that the pyramid's true purpose was to bridge the earth and the heavens, creating a permanent bond between a king's resting place and the stars he would call home. These hidden shafts were not the only place where celestial mathematics became physical reality. To translate the perfect angles of the stars into the perfect slopes of the pyramid, the ancient Egyptians relied on a mathematical framework of elegant simplicity and power. Their system was built not on complex equations, but on a profound understanding of proportion and geometry, managed with tools as basic as knotted ropes and marked rods. The Rhind mathematical papyrus, a surviving manual from that era, reads like a scribe's practical notebook filled with problems for calculating areas, volumes, and most importantly for the pyramid builders' slopes. Their key concept was the seeked. Imagine a workman holding a palm rod, a simple measuring stick. The seek defined a slope not by the angle we would measure in degrees, but by the horizontal distance measured in palms for each single cubit of vertical rise. A pyramid face with a seek of 5 1/4 meant that for every 1 cubit it climbed upward, it moved inward 5 1/4 palms. This was a tangible, buildable measurement. A team could physically lay out this proportion on the ground using ropes and stakes, scaling it up to any size without ever needing to comprehend an abstract angle. This system was perfectly suited to their astronomical goals. Once they had established their true north-south and east-west baselines using the stars, the seeked provided the mathematical recipe to build upward at the precise, consistent angle required to meet at a single apex. Their entire numerical system, which relied on unit fractions like 1/2, 1/4, and 1/8, was perfectly capable of handling these calculations. They could break down complex proportions into manageable steps, adding one fraction to another until the precise seeked was achieved. This reveals a mind-bending truth. The breathtaking geometry of the Great Pyramid, a shape that has captivated humanity for millennia, was likely born from a series of simple, repeatable calculations using fractions a schoolchild could understand. The true genius was not in the complexity of the math, but in its flawless application across a 13-acre project involving millions of stone blocks. Every quarryman, every mason, every hauling crew was working from the same proportional logic, a logic that seamlessly connected the surveyor's celestial observations to the stonecutter's chisel. This mathematical bridge between the infinite sky and the tangible stone is what made the celestial vision permanently real. This celestial mathematics was guided by a powerful, unseen force, a mythology that transformed the cold points of light into a living, divine map. For the ancient Egyptians, the stars were not distant balls of gas. They were the physical forms of their gods and the souls of the departed. The constellation we call Orion was, to them, the god Sa, the celestial embodiment of Osiris, the lord of the afterlife and resurrection. When they aligned the pyramid's southern shaft directly toward the belt of Orion, they were not merely sighting a star. They were building a bridge for the pharaoh's soul, a direct pathway for him to join Osiris in an eternal cycle of rebirth among the imperishable stars. This spiritual imperative dictated their technical choices. It explains why they targeted these specific stars with such obsessive precision when other, brighter stars were available. The alignment was a functional part of the tomb's theology, a necessary step in the king's cosmic journey. The circumpolar stars held a different but equally profound meaning. These stars, which never dip below the horizon, were known as the imperishable ones. They represented the ultimate state of existence, a realm beyond death, decay, or change. By aligning their entire pyramid complex to the circle of these eternal sentinels, the builders were anchoring the pharaoh's monument to the most stable, unchanging part of the universe. It was an act of sympathetic magic in stone, an effort to make the king's legacy as enduring as the stars themselves. This mythological framework provided a constant, motivating purpose that spanned generations. A worker hauling a stone block might not understand the complex seeked calculation, but he would understand that he was building the pharaoh's stairway to the imperishable ones. This shared belief system united the entire society behind a single, monumental goal. This fusion of science and spirit is what makes the Egyptian achievement so unique. The priest astronomers who charted the stars did so with a dual purpose. Their minds were calculating precise angles, and their hearts were communing with the gods. The mythological narrative did not hinder their science, it directed it. It told them which celestial targets were the most important, providing a cultural prioritization for their astronomical observations. This reveals a world where the quest for precision was not a cold, technical exercise, but a sacred duty. The accuracy of their alignments was a measure of their devotion, a testament to their desire to perfectly fulfill a divine blueprint. The pyramid, therefore, stands as a perfect meeting point of earth and sky, of number and myth, of the measurable and the eternal. It challenges our modern separation of disciplines, suggesting that perhaps the greatest human achievements emerge when our search for truth is guided by a sense of profound meaning. The stars above provided more than just a direction. They offered a mirror to the earth. Across the sprawling 13-acre foundation, the pyramid builders created a network of shallow, water-filled basins, transforming the desert floor into a vast astronomical instrument. On a calm, clear night, the surface of this water became a flawless horizontal plane, a liquid mirror reflecting the constellations with perfect clarity. This was not for beauty, but for precision. An observer would stand between two such basins separated by a great distance. By sighting a specific star directly in the sky and then observing its twin reflection in the water, he could create a sightline of absolute level. If the star and its reflection aligned perfectly, the two basins were at the exact same elevation. If they did not, workers would patiently adjust the stone foundations until the celestial alignment was perfect across the entire site. This method harnessed a fundamental law of nature, that still water always finds a true horizontal. The challenge of coordinating this across acres of stone was immense. It required teams of observers on clear nights, communicating with lamps or signals, each one ensuring their section of the foundation was locked into the same celestial plane. The smallest error at the base, a tilt of just a fraction of an inch, would have been magnified into a deviation of many feet by the time the pyramid reached its apex. The evidence for this is etched into the Giza plateau itself, where archaeologists have identified carefully carved channels and stone-lined basins that could not have served any practical purpose for irrigation or drainage. Their placement and design are perfectly suited for this stellar reflection technique. This was engineering on a grand scale, using the predictable motion of the heavens to solve one of the most difficult terrestrial problems, making a mountain of stone sit perfectly flat. It demonstrates a profound understanding that the cosmos could provide not only alignment, but also balance, turning starlight into a practical tool for achieving perfection. This solar cross-referencing did not end with a single observation. The pyramid builders established a permanent, self-correcting system by harnessing the sun's annual journey across the horizon. They understood that the precise points of sunrise and sunset shift gradually throughout the year, tracing a slow arc from north to south and back again. The key to their verification lay in the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices, the 4 anchor points of the solar year. During the spring and autumn equinox, the sun rises perfectly due east and sets perfectly due west. On these 2 days, the builders could perform a direct solar check of their primary north-south baseline. If their foundation was truly square, the shadow of a gnomon at solar noon would bisect the angle formed by lines drawn to the equinox sunrise and sunset points. Any deviation would be immediately apparent. The solstices provided an even more powerful long-term check. The summer solstice sunrise occurs at its most northerly point on the horizon, while the winter solstice sunrise is at its most southerly. The midpoint between these 2 extreme positions is once again true east. By marking these extreme points with permanent stone markers on the desert plateau, the builders created a fixed terrestrial calendar. They could return to these markers year after year throughout the decades of construction to ensure their celestial alignments had not drifted. This was not a one-time setup, it was a continuous process of quality control. Think of these solstice markers as the pyramid's calibration points, like the adjustment screws on a fine instrument. The evidence for this practice is written in stone. Many temples across Egypt, built over centuries, show precise alignments to specific solar events, like the sunrise on the winter solstice illuminating the inner sanctum. This was a cultural tradition, a repeatable method passed down through generations of priest astronomers. For a project as vast as the Great Pyramid, this seasonal verification was essential. It provided a robust system of checks and balances, where the stars gave the initial direction and the sun provided the ongoing confirmation. This integration of long-term solar cycles reveals a sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics. They were not just building for their own time, they were building for eternity, and they used the sun's reliable, predictable motion to make sure their work would endure, perfectly aligned for all time. Those precisely carved limestone sockets at the pyramid's corners were far more than simple stone seats. They were the ultimate anchor points, the physical manifestation of all that celestial calculation, locking the pyramid's orientation into the bedrock for eternity. Recent laser scanning of these foundation sockets reveals a truth that defies time itself. Despite thousands of years of earthquakes and the immense weight of millions of tons of stone pressing down upon them, their original alignment has shifted by less than a fraction of a single degree. This is not the result of luck, but of an engineering process of breathtaking coordination. Each of the 4 corner sockets was not positioned in isolation. Their placement was a grand, synchronized operation. Teams of surveyors working from the established north-south and east-west baselines had to coordinate their measurements across the vast 13-acre site. The true test of their precision, however, lay in the diagonals. To ensure the foundation was a perfect square, they had to verify that the distances between opposite corners were exactly equal. This is where their celestial markers became essential. They likely used the consistent, predictable positions of specific circumpolar stars to sight along these long diagonal lines, checking that the angles at the corners were perfect 90-degree turns. Imagine the scene under the starry Egyptian sky, with teams of astronomers signaling across the darkened construction site, using the unwavering stars to confirm that each limestone socket was carved into the bedrock at its precise, predetermined location. This socket-based system was their masterstroke. Once these 4 cornerstone blocks were set into their perfectly aligned sockets, the entire geometric fate of the pyramid was sealed. Every subsequent stone, for all 2.3 million of them, would reference back to this unshakable foundation. The survival of this alignment through centuries is a silent testament to the effectiveness of their methods. It represents a perfect marriage of celestial vision and terrestrial engineering, where the timeless patterns of the night sky were translated into a physical form so robust it could withstand the ravages of millennia. This enduring precision, locked in stone at the very corners, raises a profound question about the builders themselves. What driving force beyond pure engineering compelled such an obsessive pursuit of perfection, and how did their very world shape the tools they used to achieve it? Yet, even with the stars reflected in water and the sun marking the seasons, the pyramid builders faced a fundamental obstacle. The natural horizon of the Giza Plateau, with its subtle dips and rises, was far too irregular for the flawless measurements they required. A star rising over a distant dune would appear at a slightly different moment than one clearing a low hill, introducing tiny errors that would compound over the vast scale of their project. Their solution was to build their own horizon. Across the desert, at carefully surveyed distances from the construction site, they erected permanent stone alignments. These were not random piles of rock, but precisely positioned markers that created an artificial horizon line, a flat, consistent reference plane against the sky. An astronomer stationed at the pyramid's center could now observe a star's rising or setting against this man-made line, knowing the measurement would be identical night after night, year after year. This technique standardized their celestial observations, removing the variable of the local landscape. Archaeological surveys around Giza and other pyramid sites have revealed patterns of these stone alignments, rows of markers that seem to have no practical purpose for construction or ceremony. Their placement, however, corresponds perfectly with key astronomical sightlines, particularly for the circumpolar stars that never set. By creating this fixed, artificial horizon, the builders could make highly accurate measurements of a star's altitude, the angle above the horizon, which was crucial for calculating the pyramid's foundational angles. This method demonstrates a profound leap in scientific thinking. They were no longer passive observers of the heavens, forced to work with the imperfections of the earth. They had become active architects of their own measurement environment, shaping the land itself to serve their celestial vision. This artificial horizon was the final piece in a comprehensive system of checks and balances, a terrestrial grid built to capture the perfection of the sky, ensuring that every observation, from the first stake in the sand to the final capstone placed 500 feet in the air, was locked into a single, unified, and eternal alignment. The moon's wandering path offered a different kind of celestial clock, while the sun and the circumpolar stars provided the grand, unchanging framework for the pyramid's primary orientation. The moon's complex cycle was reserved for a more intricate task, defining the secondary axes and the interior alignments of the surrounding temple complex. Imagine a priest astronomer not just looking for a single star, but carefully charting the moon's position night after night, year after year. They tracked its journey as it swung from its most northerly rising point to its most southerly, a slow oscillation that takes over 18 years to complete. This long cycle, known as a lunar standstill, became a critical marker. The alignments of certain corridors in the valley temples, those structures connected to the pyramids by long causeways, do not point to the sun or the northern stars. Instead, they frame the horizon at the precise points where the moon would rise at the peak of its northern or southern journey. This was not a primary direction for the massive tomb, but a refined auxiliary alignment for the rituals surrounding it. To achieve this, the Egyptians developed sophisticated methods for predicting lunar phases and positions, knowledge that required meticulous record-keeping across generations. They understood that the moon's path was a more complicated dance than the sun's reliable arc, and they built this understanding directly into their architecture. This lunar dimension reveals a comprehensive celestial strategy. They were not just using one or two bright points in the sky, they were harnessing the entire celestial orchestra, from the steady drumbeat of the pole stars to the intricate melody of the moon. It demonstrates a holistic vision where every available cosmic reference was utilized, proving their architectural planning was as deep and nuanced as their astronomical knowledge. This generational chain of knowledge was the true backbone of their celestial precision. A master astronomer would not simply tell his apprentice where to place a stake. He would teach him how to read the subtle dance of the stars, how to feel the perfect stillness in the air for a water reflection, and how to calculate the seat for a slope that would reach the heavens. This was a living tradition, passed from one set of hands to the next through decades of careful practice. Egyptian society formalized this process within the temple schools known as the Houses of Life. Here, young scribes destined to become the master builders of their age learned a sacred curriculum. They practiced geometry on limestone flakes, solved problems from mathematical papyri, and memorized the rising and setting positions of the most important stars. This was not merely theoretical knowledge, it was a practical toolkit for shaping the world. The continuity of their architectural tradition is a testament to the success of this system. The Step Pyramid of Giza, the Bent Pyramid at Dasha, and finally the Great Pyramid of Giza itself, each structure shows a refinement of technique, a building upon the lessons learned from the previous generation. This was not a series of isolated projects, but a single, centuries-long conversation in stone, with each new pharaoh and his builders adding a new sentence to the dialogue. The temple libraries served as the collective memory of this endeavor. Scrolls recorded not just the myths of the gods, but the precise methods for aligning a foundation to Theban, the formulas for calculating volumes of stone, and the calendars dictating the most auspicious dates to begin construction. When a master builder passed, his knowledge did not die with him. It was safely archived, ready to guide the hands of those who would come after. This institutional framework transformed individual genius into a cultural constant. It ensured that the obsessive pursuit of celestial alignment, born in one era, could be maintained and even improved upon for hundreds of years. The Great Pyramid's perfection, therefore, is not the work of a single lifetime, but the culmination of a civilization's long-term commitment to preserving and advancing its most sacred sciences. This raises a final, humbling thought about our own time and what it truly takes to build for eternity. The circumpolar stars became the silent guardians of the pyramid's alignment, a fixed wheel of light turning endlessly around a point in the dark. While other stars rose and set, these eternal sentinels remained always visible, tracing perfect circles around the celestial pole night after night, season after season. This perpetual motion offered the ancient astronomers something invaluable, a constant reference point that never disappeared. They developed specialized observation rituals for these stars, treating them as the most reliable markers in the entire sky. A priest would station himself at a specific point on the plateau, His Merkhet sighting device carefully calibrated and tracked the path of a single circumpolar star like Kochab or Firkad as it made its nightly journey. He was not just watching a star, he was mapping a perfect circle in the heavens, the center of which was true north. This method provided a continuous verification system. Unlike a star that rises in the east, which can only be used for a single moment of alignment, a circumpolar star could be observed for hours, its position checked and rechecked against the pyramid's growing corners. The Egyptians understood that these stars were the most stable anchors in their celestial toolkit, and they built their entire foundational orientation around this unwavering fact. But their genius extended beyond a single lifetime. They were aware of a slow, grand celestial dance known as precession, the gradual wobble of the Earth's axis that causes the position of the North Pole to drift among the stars over a cycle of 26,000 years. The pole star of the Great Pyramid's era was not our Polaris, but Thuban in the constellation of Draco. The builders knew that their celestial references were not permanent. Temple records and the changing alignments of pyramids built centuries apart show they adapted their primary stars as the poles shifted. This reveals a truly long-term perspective, a scientific tradition designed to outlast individual human lives. They were not building for a decade, but for millennia, and their methods were robust enough to accommodate the slow drift of the cosmos itself. This sophisticated categorization of the sky, separating the transient stars from the perpetual ones, demonstrates a profound practical wisdom. They selected their tools from the heavens with the care of a master craftsman choosing his finest instruments, knowing that the constancy of the circumpolar stars provided the only foundation solid enough to support a vision meant to touch eternity. The pyramid's perfect square base required more than just north-south and east-west lines. It demanded diagonals of absolute precision. To achieve this, the builders turned to another celestial pattern, pairs of stars that formed perfect right angles in the night sky. They identified specific stellar combinations that appeared at 45-degree angles to the horizon, creating a natural celestial square. When one star rose in the northeast, its partner would set in the southwest, or one would be high in the northwest while the other was low in the southeast. These synchronized movements painted an invisible, giant X across the heavens. An observer would mark the point on the horizon directly beneath these diagonal pairs, establishing a northeast-southwest or northwest-southeast axis with the same methodical patience used for the cardinal directions. This was not a replacement for their other techniques, but a powerful, independent verification. If the diagonal lines derived from these star pairs intersected the primary north-south and east-west lines at perfect 90-degree angles, they knew their foundation was a true square. If there was even a slight discrepancy, they had an immediate celestial-based check to identify and correct the error. This multi-axis approach created a web of celestial confirmation. The stars gave them 4 primary directions and then additional diagonal references, all cross-checking each other. It was a system of built-in redundancy where no single measurement stood alone. The geometric perfection that continues to amaze modern surveyors was the result of this comprehensive strategy, viewing the entire dome of the night sky as a grid from which to draw their terrestrial blueprint. This reveals a mind that thought in multiple dimensions, seamlessly merging astronomy with geometry to solve one of history's most ambitious construction puzzles. Their choice of stone was as deliberate as their charting of the stars. Deep within the quarries across the Nile, master builders did not simply select any block of limestone. They sought out specific stones with a knowledge that feels almost modern. They understood that each block had an internal personality, a crystalline structure that would determine how it weathered the centuries. A stone with a uniform, fine grain was prized for the pyramid's core. its consistent density ensuring it would settle evenly under immense weight without shifting the delicate alignments. For the brilliant outer casing, they chose blocks with a specific grain orientation, laying them so the natural bedding planes of the stone would resist the scouring desert winds and seasonal temperature changes. This was not guesswork, it was applied materials science. They were thinking in geological time, selecting and placing each multi-ton block based on how it would behave over millennia, ensuring the celestial angles carved into the structure would not slowly warp or sag. Recent scientific analysis has added a fascinating layer to this practice. Studies of the pyramid stones reveal that some contain magnetic minerals. It is possible the builders intuitively selected these stones, recognizing through some lost test that they held a stable, north-seeking quality. Placing these magnetically sensitive blocks in key positions might have provided a subtle, permanent reinforcement to their astronomical alignments, locking the structure not just to the sky above, but to the planet's own invisible field below. This careful matching of stone properties to structural purpose reveals a holistic engineering philosophy. The astronomical alignment defined the pyramid's soul, but this geological precision gave it an enduring body. Every block was a chosen participant in a grand, eternal scheme, its physical properties harnessed to protect the sacred geometry from the slow, relentless passage of time. This seamless integration of celestial vision with terrestrial material is what truly separates their achievement, proving they were not just master astronomers, but unparalleled masters of the very earth they built upon. The precise alignment of the pyramids was sealed not with a surveyor's mark, but with a sacred ritual. Before a single stone was laid, the high priests and master builders gathered under the stars for the ceremony of the stretching of the cord. Temple carvings depict this pivotal moment, showing priests holding a forked sighting tool and a mallet, their gaze fixed on the heavens. This was far more than a groundbreaking event. It was the spiritual activation of the construction site, a deliberate fusion of divine invocation and technical measurement. The ritual was timed to coincide with a potent celestial event, such as the heliacal rising of Sirius or a specific planetary configuration, moments believed to channel cosmic power directly into the foundation. As the priests chanted and made offerings, they were also performing a critical scientific task. One priest would sight a chosen circumpolar star through his instrument, while another, guided by his line of sight, would drive a stake into the ground. The cord stretched between these stakes became the sacred baseline, its orientation blessed by the gods and verified by the stars. This integration of ritual and astronomy created an unbreakable cultural command. The alignment was not merely correct, it was holy. Any deviation in the construction that followed would not just be a technical flaw, it would be a spiritual transgression. This powerful framework ensured that the knowledge of celestial alignment was preserved not as a mere set of instructions, but as a core tenet of their belief system, passed down through generations within the temple schools. The ceremony transformed the cold mechanics of astronomy into a shared, sacred duty, uniting the entire community behind a single, perfect line drawn from the earth to the eternal sky. While the stars guided the pyramid's orientation, the sun provided the means to perfect its soaring slopes. A simple vertical pole, planted firmly at the construction site, became the key to verifying the pyramid's iconic 51-degree angle. As the sun moved across the sky, the pole cast a shadow whose length changed with the time of day. The builders knew that the ratio between the pole's height and the length of its shadow at a specific moment created a perfect right-angled triangle. By calculating this ratio, they could determine the sun's exact altitude in the sky and from there derive precise angular measurements. This was not a single observation, but a continuous process of checking. They would have marked specific points on the growing pyramid faces where, at a predetermined time of day, the edge of the structure's own shadow should fall if the angle was correct. If the shadow did not align with the mark, the masons knew to adjust the next course of stones. This method transformed an abstract geometric angle into a daily, visible standard that every worker could understand. A team high on the structure could perform this check without needing access to the master surveyor's tools below, democratizing the process of quality control. The sheer consistency of the slope across all four faces, built over decades, is a testament to the effectiveness of this solar verification. It was a system built on natural law, where the pyramid's own shadow became its most honest critic, ensuring that the vision of the architects was rendered in stone with unerring fidelity. This elegant solution reveals a profound truth, that the greatest precision often comes not from complex machinery, but from learning to read the simple patterns of the world around us. The fixed stars were not the only guides in their celestial toolkit. Beyond the steady wheel of the circumpolar lights, the ancient astronomers meticulously tracked the wanderers, the planets moving against the backdrop of constellations. While stars provided the unwavering foundation for the pyramid's cardinal directions, planets like Venus and Mercury offered a dynamic secondary system of verification. These bright, moving points served as celestial checkpoints, their predictable paths allowing the builders to confirm their alignments at specific, significant moments in the construction timeline. Egyptian temple records are filled with precise observations of these planetary cycles, charting the synodic periods of Venus and the elusive appearances of Mercury. This was not casual stargazing, it was integrated data collection. The positions of these planets at the laying of a cornerstone or the dedication of a temple may have directly influenced the orientation of specific corridors or altars within the greater complex. A doorway might be aligned so that the light of Venus at its brightest would shine down its axis once every few years, marking a sacred anniversary. This planetary layer added a sophisticated temporal dimension to their work. It demonstrated an understanding that the sky contained different orders of motion, each with its own rhythm and purpose. Their ability to predict these complex planetary dances, to know where Venus would be in the sky years in advance, reveals an astronomical knowledge that moves far beyond simple alignment. It shows a culture that saw the cosmos as a multi-layered, interactive map, and their architecture as a means of engaging with its every movement. This integration of planetary observations stands as a final testament to the breathtaking breadth of their celestial measurement techniques, proving that their quest for precision left no point of light uncharted. The pyramid's base is not merely a square, it is a mathematical codex written in stone. Its perimeter, the total distance around all four sides, holds a relationship to our planet that seems to defy its ancient origins. If you take this perimeter and multiply it by the number 43,200, the result is a length that comes within a tiny fraction of the Earth's equatorial circumference. This is not a vague coincidence, it is a deliberate scaling down of the entire planet. The number 43,200 is itself a celestial key. It represents a precise fraction of the Great Year, the 26,000-year cycle of precession where the Earth's axis slowly wobbles. It also appears in other astronomical contexts, like the number of years for certain planetary alignments to repeat. This means the builders were not just aligning their structure to the stars, they were encoding the dimensions of the Earth and the cycles of time into its very foundations. The mathematical constant required to make this relationship work, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, is fundamentally embedded in the pyramid's proportions. The ancient Egyptians, through a ratio they understood practically, managed to square the circle, creating a base perimeter that behaves as if it were the circumference of a circle whose radius is the pyramid's own height. This goes far beyond any practical requirement for building a stable tomb. It speaks to a desire to create a model of the world, a microcosm where the principles of the cosmos were made permanent. This reveals a cosmological perspective where architecture was a bridge between the human scale and the cosmic scale. They were not just building on the land, they were building a representation of the land itself, scaled down by a number that resonated through the heavens. This mathematical dimension stands as perhaps their most silent and profound achievement, a permanent statement that they saw their place not just in Egypt, but within a much larger celestial order. Their vision of the night sky was a vast, organized grid waiting to be read. To translate the stars into stone with such fidelity, the ancient Egyptians developed a sophisticated celestial coordinate system, a conceptual map that turned the dome of heaven into a measurable architectural blueprint. They used the horizon itself as their foundational reference, dividing the sky into specific segments, much like the lines of latitude and longitude we use today. This system was not abstract, it was directly tied to the physical structure they were building. Each segment of the sky corresponded to a critical part of the pyramid's design, from the corners of the foundation to the angles of the ascending passages. The 36 decanal stars formed the heart of this system. These were not random stars, but a carefully chosen sequence of 36 bright stars that rose consecutively, about 40 minutes apart, throughout the course of a single night. Each star marked a specific segment of the sky and a specific hour of the night, creating a celestial clock and a spatial map rolled into one. A priest astronomer could observe a particular decan star rising and know both the time and the precise celestial coordinate it represented. This coordinate was then recorded and translated directly into the construction plan. If the master blueprint called for a certain corner to align with the rising point of a specific decan star, the builders had a clear, repeatable method to achieve it night after night, year after year. This systematic approach transformed alignment from an art into a repeatable science. It allowed for the precise recording and transmission of alignment data across generations of builders. A master surveyor from the reign of one pharaoh could pass his star charts to his successor, who would know exactly which celestial markers to use to continue the work. The survival of these decan lists and coordinate references in temple texts and coffin lids confirms their practical application. They were not just religious symbols, they were the technical manuals of their age, providing the consistent framework needed to maintain perfect alignment over a project spanning decades. This development of a formal celestial coordinate system represents the peak of their methodological sophistication. It demonstrates that their genius lay not just in observing the stars, but in creating a formal language to describe their positions, a language that could be spoken by both the astronomer gazing upward and the mason setting a stone on the desert floor. The echo of the pyramid builders' celestial methods did not fade with the fall of the Old Kingdom. Their revolutionary techniques for aligning stone with the stars began a slow journey across the ancient world, carried along the bustling trade routes that connected Egypt to the Mediterranean. Greek travelers and scholars thirsty for ancient wisdom became the primary conduits for this knowledge. The historian Herodotus, walking among the pyramids centuries after their completion, did more than just record a tourist's wonder. He documented the very methods of celestial alignment, preserving them in his writings for Greek architects and philosophers to study. This was not a simple borrowing of ideas, but a profound cultural transmission that would fundamentally shape Western architecture. The Greeks, masters of geometry in their own right, absorbed the Egyptian principle that a sacred structure must be perfectly oriented to the cosmos. You can see this legacy in the precise placement of temples like the Parthenon, where the foundations are laid with an astronomical awareness that feels distinctly Egyptian in its origin. The knowledge did not stop there. Hellenistic astronomers, building upon this inherited foundation, refined these alignment techniques, which were then adopted and scaled across the vast empire of the Romans. Their forums and great temples, from the Pantheon in Rome to distant outposts, often exhibit this same obsession with cardinal alignment, a silent testament to a methodology that began in the desert sands of Giza. The persistence of these practices across cultures and centuries is a powerful argument for their effectiveness. This was not a forgotten art, but a living tradition of precision. The techniques proved so robust, so reliable, that they became the invisible backbone of monumental construction for millennia. This journey of knowledge reveals a hidden thread connecting the age of pyramids to the dawn of classical civilization, showing how a practical solution to an engineering problem evolved into a universal architectural principle. Even in the soaring naves of medieval European cathedrals, you can find faint echoes of this ancient practice. The foundational ceremonies for great churches often involved astronomical sightings to determine their east-west axis, a direct descendant of the Egyptian ritual of stretching the cord. While the tools and the gods had changed, the core idea remained that to build a bridge to the divine, you must first anchor your work to the unwavering cycles of the heavens. This incredible durability, spanning over 3,000 years, demonstrates that the true legacy of the pyramid builders was not just in the stone they stacked, but in the celestial blueprint they created, a gift of precision that would guide human hands long after their own names were lost to time. Beneath the millions of tons of stone, a hidden system may have guided the builders' hands. The pyramid's precision did not just rise from the desert floor, it may have been anchored deep within the earth itself. Recent geophysical surveys of the Giza Plateau have revealed tantalizing anomalies, suggesting the existence of previously unknown underground spaces directly beneath the pyramid's footprint. These are not natural caves but carefully carved chambers, and their purpose may have been the ultimate safeguard for the structure's celestial alignment. Picture a room carved from the living bedrock, far below the chaos of the construction site. Here, the air is still and the temperature remains constant, day and night, season after season. In this perfectly stable environment, a master astronomer could work uninterrupted. He would not be battling the desert wind that could sway a plumb line or the heat haze that could distort a star's image. This underground chamber would have been a permanent observatory, a sealed laboratory dedicated solely to the preservation of perfection. The theory suggests that these spaces contained fixed instruments, perhaps massive stone versions of the Merkhet, permanently aligned to specific stars. As the pyramid grew layer by layer over decades, surveyors could periodically descend into this chamber to recalibrate their surface instruments against these permanent, unshakable references. It acted as the project's true north, a master clock that kept the entire endeavor in sync. This would explain one of the most baffling aspects of the construction: how alignment accuracy was maintained not just for a year, but for the 20 years it took to complete the structure. Teams of workers came and went, seasons changed, and the sky itself slowly shifted, yet the pyramid's geometry remained flawless. An underground observatory provides the missing link, a continuous calibration point that survived all the variables of surface construction. This idea transforms our understanding of the pyramid from a simple tomb into a machine with a built-in guidance system. The architecture was not just aligned to the stars, it was physically grown from a celestial seed planted deep within the earth. The potential discovery of these chambers would do more than rewrite a chapter in history. It would reveal a level of integrated engineering we are only beginning to comprehend. These seasonal markers were the desert's own permanent calendar, carved not in papyrus but in stone. Across the vast plateau, the Egyptians placed standing stones at carefully surveyed locations, positioned so their shadows would fall in a precise, predictable way during the solstices and equinoxes. A specific marker might be aligned to catch the first ray of the summer solstice sunrise, its long shadow pointing like a finger toward a corresponding point on the pyramid's foundation. Another stone miles away was set to mark the winter solstice sunset, creating a fixed line across the landscape. These were not temporary construction stakes, but eternal sentinels designed to outlive the builders themselves. Archaeologists have mapped these patterns around Giza, finding solitary stones and small alignments at great distances from the main pyramids, their placements making sense only when viewed through an astronomical lens. This network created a robust system of long-term verification. If a later generation of builders needed to check the alignment of a new temple or repair an existing structure, they did not have to reinvent the celestial wheel. They could simply return to these permanent markers, observe the shadow on the appointed day, and confirm that their work was still true to the original cosmic blueprint. This demonstrates a foresight that is almost difficult to grasp. They were building a system of knowledge that could be used and trusted for centuries, a testament to their commitment not just to a single project, but to the enduring standard of precision itself. The marker stones were a promise to the future, a way of ensuring that the sacred dialogue between the earth and the sky would never be lost. The Egyptian desert itself was a silent partner in this grand achievement. Its bone-dry air, almost entirely free of humidity, offered a window to the cosmos of stunning clarity. Stars did not twinkle as they do in more turbulent skies. They burned as steady, sharp points of light, allowing for sightings of breathtaking accuracy. This atmospheric stability was a gift that kept on giving, season after season. Unlike regions plagued by monsoon rains or months of cloud cover, the predictable Egyptian climate provided a near-perfect observational calendar. An astronomer could plan his work for any night of the year with high confidence that the sky would be open to him, enabling the long-term, repetitive measurements that were the true secret to their precision. The vast, flat expanse of the plateau presented a geometrician's dream, an uncluttered canvas stretching to the horizon. There were no forests or mountains to obscure the rising and setting of celestial bodies, allowing for the creation of those long, unwavering baselines. This unique combination of environmental factors created a natural laboratory for celestial engineering, a place where the heavens were closer and clearer than almost anywhere else on Earth. It helps explain why such phenomenal accuracy was born here and not in other advanced cultures. The Mesopotamians, for all their astronomical prowess, contended with hazy, river-valley skies. The builders of Stonehenge worked under the often cloud-shrouded skies of northern Europe. The Egyptians did not just develop advanced techniques, they had the perfect stage upon which to perform them. This environmental dimension completes the picture, revealing that their success was a symphony of human intellect playing in perfect harmony with a generous and cooperative landscape. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest innovations are born from a perfect marriage of mind and place. Their celestial alignments required more than just sight, they demanded perfect timing. To coordinate observations across the vast Giza plateau, the pyramid builders integrated precise timekeeping into their surveying rituals, using instruments that measured the steady flow of moments. The clepsydra, or water clock, was their solution for the night. This was not a simple bowl, but a carefully calibrated device where water dripped at a constant rate from one marked container into another. Under the starry sky, an astronomer tracking a circumpolar star's transit could note the exact water level at the moment it crossed his meridian line. A colleague stationed a mile away, watching the same event with his own water clock, could confirm they had made their simultaneous observation at the very same instant. This synchronization was crucial for creating their long, straight baselines. Any delay between two observers would introduce a tiny error, a misalignment that would grow with distance. The water clock eliminated that variable, turning individual sightings into a coordinated, multi-point survey. For daytime work, they relied on shadow clocks. These were not just simple sundials for telling the hour, but precision tools for construction coordination. A shadow clock scale was marked to show not only the time, but also the sun's precise altitude. A foreman could call for a measurement at a specific shadow length, knowing that teams across the site were observing the same solar angle at that exact moment. This allowed them to verify that foundation stones were being set to the same intended height and angle simultaneously. The true innovation was the integration of these two systems. The water clocks calibrated the night stellar work, while the shadow clocks governed the day's solar verification. This created a continuous cycle of temporal precision, where the flow of water and the movement of shadows were harnessed to bind the construction to the cosmos. This systematic merger of time and space reveals a level of project management we rarely attribute to the ancient world. They were not just building with stone, they were building with time itself, using its relentless rhythm to ensure that every block in every location was placed in perfect harmony with their celestial blueprint. This relentless pursuit of accuracy was built on a foundation of verification, not just observation. The ancient Egyptians operated with a profound understanding that any single measurement, no matter how carefully taken, could contain a hidden flaw. Their true genius lay in creating a system of cross-checking, where every alignment was confirmed through multiple, independent pathways. A line first traced by the stars would be verified by the sun, and that solar measurement would then be checked against a geometric construction on the ground. This was not merely double-checking, it was a robust methodology designed to trap and eliminate errors. If the north-south line from the circumpolar stars matched the north-south line from the gnommon's shortest shadow, they had confidence. If those two, in turn, aligned with the diagonals established by specific star pairs, they achieved certainty. This multi-method approach created a web of evidence where each technique served as a witness to the others. A tiny misalignment in one process would stand out clearly when compared against the results of another, allowing the astronomer priests to pinpoint and correct mistakes that would have been invisible otherwise. This systematic redundancy reveals a quality control mindset we often associate with modern engineering. They understood that in a project of such immense scale, lasting decades and involving countless workers, the only way to preserve perfection was to build a self-correcting system. The consistency of their results, visible in pyramids built centuries apart, is the ultimate testament to this approach. It was not the infallibility of any one tool that guaranteed their precision, but the unshakable agreement between many different tools, all pointing toward the same celestial truth. This layered verification transformed their work from a collection of good measurements into a single, coherent, and enduring masterpiece of alignment. This final synthesis of celestial knowledge and earthly engineering stands as one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. We have traced a path from the Merkhet's simple plumb line to a verification system of astonishing complexity, a process where every measurement was confirmed by multiple, independent celestial witnesses. Their methods achieved a precision that rivals, and in some cases even challenges, our own modern technologies, all without the aid of computers or digital instruments. This was not magic, but the result of a culture that saw no division between the sacred rhythm of the stars and the practical work of moving mountains of stone. They possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of the cosmos, coupled with a relentless patience that allowed them to transform the slow dance of the heavens into a permanent terrestrial reality. These forgotten techniques, lost for millennia beneath the sands of time, are now being pieced back together through painstaking research. Each new discovery serves as a powerful reminder that ancient knowledge often held a profound wisdom we are only just beginning to appreciate. The pyramids, therefore, are far more than silent tombs for forgotten kings. They are a permanent testimony to human ingenuity, a stone manifesto of our eternal drive to reach for the stars and understand our place within the vast cosmic order. As we continue to decode their secrets with advanced tools like laser scanning and ground-penetrating radar, we gain more than just historical insight. We find inspiration, innovative approaches to problem-solving that can inform how we tackle our own modern engineering and environmental challenges. The legacy of this ancient precision continues to guide us, offering a timeless lesson in observation, perseverance, and the elegant application of natural law. It is a legacy written in stone and aligned with the heavens, a silent conversation across the ages that continues to speak to anyone who looks up at the night sky in